everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Mobilecast, and I am in sunny San Francisco this week, and I'm sitting down with Eric Cowperthwaite, and I hope I said that correctly. He's going to correct me in a second, I'm sure, from Providence Health Services, where he is the CISO, and we're going to have a fun conversation about consumerization of IT, and really just see where it takes us for the next half an hour. So, Eric, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. So I'm, like Brian mentioned, I'm the CISO of a large healthcare organization, Providence Health. Actually, we have a couple other interesting bits to our business. We're 32 hospitals, but we also have a liberal arts university and a private Catholic high school and some daycares. And so life's a little challenging. It's not just one industry.
And your history before you joined Providence Health Services?
Before that, so I worked for EDS for about a decade, Electronic Data Systems, which sadly doesn't exist anymore. It's now HP Enterprise Services. And then before that, I spent 11 years in the U.S. Army.
So you actually had a fair amount of exposure to security, and you're probably coming at consumerization from a slightly different angle than some other people.
Yeah, that's probably true, and I would tend to say I've been in the security business for my entire adult life. I mean, standing on the West German border in 1985 with a rifle, I think counts as security.
I would hope so.
Yeah. So that's what I've done my whole life, but I don't. But I'm not really an IT security guy. That is, I didn't, grow up in the corporate IT group and start out as a firewall administrator and do antivirus deployments. That really isn't my background. My background is in how to secure big things, whether that's, during the Cold War, or it is as a professional services guy with EDS trying to help customers figure out their security issues, or now as a CISO where I'm at. The focus has been, for lack of a better term, the business aspects of security, not how to make antivirus work.
It's interesting because, I know a couple of CISOs and a couple of CSOs, and, your background really is so much different than most of theirs. Most of them grew up in the IT security industry. And, I think as we get into it, we're going to see a little bit more of how that changes how you approach things. I mean, you must deal with a lot of CISOs and CSOs. Do you find that your opinion diverges somewhat from there?
I think the area we're about to talk about is where it gets really divergent in terms of mobility and consumer devices and consumer focused cloud services. The interesting thing is the further up the security food chain you go. So if you go sit down with a security officer of big Fortune 500, say up in the top 100 slots sort of space, Costco, for example, or General Dynamics, or those kind of companies. These guys are business leaders first and foremost. Those companies don't bring people to that level who are not focused on how to make that business successful.
I have to agree because, I think that one of the things that we see, I work in a big company with 110,000 people, and, sometimes our focus is less on the business and more on securing things. And, then the business and security sometimes just, they knock heads because, it's, wait a second, we have all this money on the table, and you're telling us we can't do something, and it's less risk analysis and risk mitigation, right. And it's more, we need to secure everything.
Yeah, we need to secure everything, and we forgot that whatever your business is, my business happens to be providing medical services to sick people. That's, at the end of the day, you break a leg, you want to go to my emergency room and get taken care of. That's my business. What I do within that business is provide information security services. But my business isn't providing information security, it's providing health care. So you can't forget that.
And really, that's an important distinction. So, now that we've kind of laid down the background, we're actually here at the site conference, which is the consumerization of IT in the enterprise. And, we actually heard a really good comment this morning from Kevin Jones from Nassau Goddard. And, his comment, which I really liked, was we need to take the IT out of consumerization of IT in the enterprise and really talk about the consumerization of the enterprise. Right. And, knowing that, you guys at Providence Health Services have done, you guys have rolled out iPads, you've done a bunch of stuff, and, let's start at the beginning, because you told a great story on stage yesterday about, how you knew it was time to start looking at tablets and devices and how you knew when it was there. So why don't you pick it up from there?
So here's set the stage. All large companies have annual executive conferences, right? Everybody who's a whatever particular level in the company and above goes to these conferences, and you set you roll out what's the strategy for next year, and here's the thing, here's the cool things you need to know that we're doing. And,
it's simple. Yeah, we all do. We do it. I don't know anybody who doesn't.
Right. So in 2010, when everybody, this is a Mobilecast, so you guys all remember iPad, and when the iPad came out, my kid told me, I don't know why you're so excited about it, it's just a big iPod. I was like, well, yeah, that's the point, right? But anyway, so that was in April, right? iPad comes out in April of 2010, and our executive conference that year is in October, so it's only 5 months later, right? There's about 165 executives in Providence, people who make that executive cut level. And I walk into the room, the conference room, and sitting at all the tables are about 80 of our executives with iPads.
So over 50% of your executives walk into a conference with something that nobody said they could do, should do, anything else.
That's right. And it's only 5 months after the iPad came out. Remember, this is not today when everybody thinks an iPad is the cat's meow and they got to have it. This is 2010 when they're just starting to get adopted. So these guys, they all went out and bought it with their own money. They all figured out, and executives don't do this well, they all figured it out how to get it connected to our email system, and they all figured out how to start working on them, because that was, for whatever the reasons were, better, faster, easier, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Doesn't matter why, because that's the point of consumerization, right, is that they prefer this as a consumer to some other thing. The point is, I walk in the room and half of our executives are using iPads, and I'm like, so then I promptly got my iPad out and sent an email off to my team that said, we need to figure this out, because if we don't figure it out, they're going to figure it out anyway. If we don't get on this horse and ride it, they're going to leave us behind. They're going to do it anyway.
I'm impressed that wasn't the CEO walked into the room, because we've had a lot of those where, and I've heard lots of stories, but we've seen some of it ourselves. The CEO, whoever it happens to be, CFO, walks in with a device and says, "Make it work." Right. And nobody wants to say no to them, but it's interesting that you talk about they made it work, and I think that one of the things that resonates with me and I talk about a lot is people don't go to these devices because it's harder for them to get stuff done.
Right.
They go, whether it's a phone, a tablet, whether it's a laptop. Laptops are mobile as well. Whatever the device, they went to it because it makes their job easier.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, regardless of what you want the security stance or anything else to be, it's important that you don't make their job harder again. Because it's hard to put, once their job gets easier, it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle.
I've said this in security and some other security guys too, that once you give somebody something, then taking it away later on is really hard. So we were saying that about smartphones and email back, probably about 2008 or so, right? Users had figured out how to connect their personal smartphone to Exchange server, and the guys running Exchange server hadn't really shut that down yet. This was pretty common across lots of companies. So you've given it to them. If you try to take it away, you end up with a rebellion.
Pry it out of my cold, dead hands.
Exactly. And I don't think the IT guys understand yet how much rebellion what that rebellion will mean to them.
Yeah, because, you said in my session, we kind of went back and forth yesterday between our two sessions, but, I talk about legacy thinking. It's the whole piece of you own the device.
Yeah.
And, if you're working with BYOD, owning the device just doesn't work. Because people don't want to give up people don't want to see their personal photos deleted. People don't want you to necessarily want their privacy. They don't want you to know where they're going. But that doesn't mean you can't control your corporate data on the device, you can't protect it or anything else.
Consumerization is going to, for all the reasons you just said, consumerization is going to finally force security to shift from the device to the data. We have fought that change, even though that's the obvious and important thing to do is secure the data. Why do we put firewalls up and antivirus and intrusion detection systems and all this other stuff? It's not because we really care if you break a laptop. It's because we care about the data that's on it. That's why we encrypt the hard drive, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because data's always been the issue.
Yeah.
And we kept finding ways to say, let's not worry about the data. Because we own the laptop, we can encrypt it with BitLocker, Safeguard Easy, whatever it happens to be.
We took this computer security paradigm that came into existence in the 80s of basically build a castle and put all your data in the castle, right? And you guys can't see all my hand gestures, but they're entertaining. So
he certainly talks like an Italian, so. But that makes two of us, so
half my family is Hungarian, so close enough. So we took this paradigm that we created back in the mainframe days of build a castle, stick your computer and your data inside the castle, and all will be well. And we extended it first to the client-server environment, and then we said, oh my gosh, now those laptops exist, we got to build a castle around every laptop. Well, now there's like 4 billion phones in the world. It won't work anymore. We're beyond the point where it will work. And you heard yesterday about the Internet of Things. Cisco talked about it. I don't know if you went to that session.
I went to this Internet of... Actually, they didn't call it the Internet of Things. They called it the Internet of Everything, which was...
Yes, and it's the awakening of things, right? Well, I just bought a washer and dryer on Friday, and the washer's Wi-Fi enabled.
So it can tell you when it finishes a load? I'm
not quite sure why it's Wi-Fi enabled. I'm going to figure this out, but it'll be a thing on the internet, right? And in the not too distant future, for some ungodly reason, your toaster will be Wi-Fi enabled. So there's the toaster will be Wi-Fi enabled, right? I don't know why exactly, but it will be. Your refrigerator will be on the internet, and it'll have a LED panel in it, an LCD panel in it, and you can use it as a computer and as a television. And
the refrigerator I understand somewhat, especially if we start using, RFIDs or, NFC or something on our, like when I put my milk in, if it reads in there and it gets the expiration date and everything else that's part of it, okay, that makes a little bit of sense to me because, okay, my milk's expiring, I'm in, and if I have a contextual device and I'm in a supermarket, your milk's going to expire tomorrow, you may want to buy more.
Sure.
And, that makes sense to me.
The washer, I think, will be able to send service data back to the manufacturer, that kind of thing.
Or maybe they'll tell you need more bleach. I don't really know on that
I'm
one.
not quite sure what that's all about. Maybe I can start and stop it remotely. Who knows? But the point is, everything is going to be enabled as a device, and as a device on the network. You can't build a castle around all these devices. You can't put it around, how are you going to protect the washer and dryer and the toaster and the refrigerator and your smartphone? And do you know how many devices I have in my house? I mean, not counting appliances and whatnot. I have 3 MacBooks, an iMac, 4 iPads, 4 iPhones, and 3 iPods. 3 iPod Touches.
You're close to me. You're not up to me, but you're close to me.
And and a TiVo, an Xbox, and a PlayStation.
I have 3 TiVos, so.
Yeah, let's not forget all those guys, right? And I'm about to buy a Samsung Smart TV for up in the bedroom, right? So, I mean, this is an insane number of enabled devices, and you can't build those castle walls around them. So we got to avoid that and get to the data and protect the data.
And it's interesting because, people started at the devices, now they're moving, we hear about mobile application management,
Right.
MAM, and they're moving to the applications because that's their new way to build their castle.
It's closer to the data, which is good.
Which is very good, but, I've always said, start with the data.
Yeah.
Build your protection around the data, then move up to the apps, then move up to the devices. And, we seem to reverse that. Let's go the other way. And it's much harder, but it's a big step because people have to start looking at their data. And we have too much, and with big data and everything else. But you were actually, so you had iPads coming in.
Yeah.
And, the approach you took, I loved, and I'd love you to actually talk about a little bit about it because I tweeted out your quote from yesterday, and we got some response, and we had a little bit of a conversation on it. But you kind of actually looked at the iPad very differently than you looked at a laptop.
Yeah. So, I think the first thing we looked at is we said we sat down and said, what are the controls that are in place on this device, and let's control that or compare that to the controls that we want in place on a mobile device in general. And pretty quickly we found the iPad has hardware encryption. It has the ability through policy to turn on and off passwords. It has the ability to wipe after X number of bad password attempts. It has the ability to make the passwords complex. It can be remotely wiped. It can be geolocated. The applications are sandboxed. And so my team brought all this back to me, and I was like, well, isn't this all this stuff that we have been saying we want on our mobile devices forever from a security perspective? And you're telling me that out of the box I have all those things? What do I not like about this?
And it's interesting because you don't get, most laptops you pull out don't work that way. And we're starting to see some of that technology go back to the laptop.
You can now buy, if you ask for it, a laptop with a 3G chip on it that can, do phone home type stuff, and you can buy it
Intel
with
TPM.
You can buy it with absolute CompuTrace for geolocation and remote wipe, but those are still they're not embedded in the device; they're added onto it in some fashion. Even if it's a piece of hardware, it's not intentionally created with absolute CompuTrace.
Now, did you have some of the people in security come back and say, well, yeah, that's what we've always wanted, but
now we want more.
Yeah, now we want more.
Now we want mobile device management. We want to actually, and I was like, okay, but so to me there were 2 things that came out of this, right? Or two things that were going on. One is security people never seem to be satisfied, right?
Yeah, that is a problem.
We need to make it more secure. Okay, well, we need to make it more user-friendly, too. But the other thing that seemed to drive that to me was this information security vendor ecosystem that has arisen. So instead of saying, hey, we have the security features we want, we can actually turn them on and off via Exchange ActiveSync, that's pretty cool, right? I mean, really.
So you already have Exchange, you already have something that can do most, maybe not all of it, but can probably do 90% of it.
Yeah, you've already got it. It's costing you nothing except some FTE time to do this. But there's this whole ecosystem around, we're going to provide you with more features, and we're going to sell you stuff that will meet the security requirements. I did the scare quote marks in the air, and you're going to buy this awesome new security product, and it'll make you more secure than you were before. That entire ecosystem exists, and it immediately saw opportunity around consumer devices with things like mobile device management, for example.
And that's even extended. So now we see things about the fact that, it's no longer securing your corporate mobile devices. It's all about securing BYOD devices. They don't talk about corporate mobile. Those are off to the side now, and it's all about, okay, BYOD, that's the big buzzword. So we're going to keep your corporation safe with BYOD. And it's like, okay, but your product's the same product I had last month.
And let's even think about this, okay? So I'll use my company as the example. My corporate devices are used for, like, my hospice nurses and some mobile supply chain type stuff. My BYOD stuff is used by executives, by physicians, and by staff, like back office staff. Which of those two groups of devices is more important to me? The ones that the hospice nurses and the mobile supply chain folks are carrying around that have sensitive corporate data on them, or the executive's device with his email and a few of his documents?
And that's, let's not minimize the fact that if you have the right executive, they could have some interesting talks on it. But, you can develop solutions for those people, and part of it is, understanding where to go with that.
I mean, from a strategy perspective, I probably want to focus MDM on my owned devices, not my BYOD.
So you've decided to do these devices, you've decided to let them in. Not that you have much of a choice, they were already in the program.
We don't. We have 12,000 physicians who are not employed by us, but who have the right to come in our hospital and practice medicine. Guess what they bring in the door with them?
What makes their job easier? Something
exactly.
I love the way you referred to it yesterday, and you actually got shocked on stage, which was kind of neat.
Yeah.
So Eric and I talked afterwards, but Eric asked this question of how many of you have ever had to deal with a physician in a hospital or a clinic or whatever, and everybody raised their hand. Has anybody not had to do that? And one person actually raised his hand, and Eric was not ready for that to happen.
That's like the first time. I changed how I asked that question today, actually, to avoid the issue, because everybody's seen a doctor sometime in their life.
And so, but, getting past that, what was the biggest hurdle you came up with? I know, because I don't think, if I remember correctly, it wasn't security that you had to deal with. It was more, you had all these devices and how to actually give them the service they needed where people were. Yeah,
so the whole point was to provide a less computer. So we don't want a physician to be, or a nurse for that matter, to be like a clerk, sitting at the computer typing, looking over to you to ask you a question, then going back to typing. And most people in the last few years have had that experience with their doctor or nurse or what have you. What we want to do is return to the experience you had when your physician used a paper medical record. They looked at the record, they set it down, they turned around, and they interacted with you. The consumer devices like an iPad give us that ability again.
It's bringing the focus back to the interaction not the device.
While giving you all the power of taking what used to be on paper and making it electronic.
And giving you the ability to look at data faster, better, and,
Right.
I don't know if you guys do it, but I know that there's at least one other hospital I've seen that does this, that, they'll actually put x-rays and tutorials on there so they can say, look, here's your knee, you're going in for an arthroscopic knee surgery, let's
All this kind
walk
of
you
cool
through
stuff, right? Or our physicians, when they're dealing with tough cases, like, say, cancer patients that aren't responding well to treatment, they want to be able to gather a group of experts and have them all look at the same thing and make a collaborative expert-to-expert decision about what to do with this tough case. This is not going to be very easy to do if you all have to gather around a single laptop, which has been the case in the past, or you are doing the traditional display slides on the wall or whatever. But when they are all holding an iPad and looking at the exact same thing, and it's like holding a paper record in their hand, it really works well. So you get these 8 or 10 docs standing around consulting with each other, and they can rapidly create expert-to-expert collaboration.
Now, you didn't talk about this yesterday, but let's go here. Are you looking at other consumer devices? So, for example, you have these iPads and all in your doctor's hands. Are you looking at, for example, putting up Apple TVs in certain spots so they can, shoot the big picture up there and, make that gathering around a little bit easier? They can draw on it, do that.
Yeah, I think we've actually got some of that in our hospitals already without me even knowing about it. I mean, I think that's the reality. But yes, we really want to. So we have 3,000 physicians that we employ, and another about 10,000 that work in our hospitals as well. We want to take these 14,000 experts who are spread out across 5 states, and we want to enable them to collaborate with each other. And so, like, the thing we saw demonstrated last night, where you buy this $500 panoramic camera that's Wi-Fi and cellular enabled, and you can create panoramic telepresence conferences for $500, was really cool to me. And that kind of thing, where you could set that down in a patient room and have a telepresence that would enable an expert in Seattle and an expert in Portland to talk to each other and
involve the patient at the same time.
And that kind of stuff is super cool. So we're going to see more, whether it's Apple TV or that thing, I forget the name of, Astia was the company. We're going to see lots more of that kind of thing because it breaks down the walls that separate our experts from each other.
And so what do you start looking at? Being your position, you're trying to enable the business, but also trying to be secure about it. So when these new pieces come in, how do you handle them?
Well, there's a couple of things. The first one is for things that you can predict that people are going to want, like online cloud storage, right? Dropbox, to say the dreaded word, or actually in healthcare, the dreaded word is Google Drive.
Yep.
We know that people are going to want those. And we know that if we prevent them, they'll find ways around it. What happens when you tell your kid they can't do something?
First thing they do is they do it.
Exactly. And they do it without you looking. So that they're sneaky about it, right? People are going to be sneaky about it. They're going to try and get around your ban because they think your ban is silly. So the very first thing we're doing right now is, and have done, is pre-approving cloud consumer services that we think people are going to want.
Now I'm assuming you pre-approve them because you go out, you look at them, you vet
it. Hey, you know what? It has identity management that allows it to uniquely identify users, and it has access controls that we can administer to control who gets access to which pieces of data. And it has a logging and event reporting system, and so it's got the stuff we think it should have. So service X, Y, and Z in the online storage arena are acceptable, and we've pre-approved them, and anybody in the company can use it.
And I think what's important to grasp from what you just said is you didn't pick one. You still gave them a choice. You looked at them, you were trying to find stuff, that they do, and you vetted them and you pre-approved them, but it was stuff that they didn't have to just go to Box. They didn't just have to go to Dropbox or Watchdog or Scient, whoever it is.
We were going for the 80% rule, right? This choice will cover 80% of what in this particular space, whether we're talking online storage or HR services or whatever in the cloud services that people are looking for. We've tried to make sure we hit about the 80% mark.
And if the other 20% want it, they have to come to you for
approval. They have to come ask. But you know what? They do come ask now because we're not establishing ourselves as saying no.
And that's important,
Yeah.
It's security, it's IT. Everybody has to get out of saying no and say, okay, let's see how we can enable you to do that and if it's the right way to do it.
And I think the biggest reason for that particular perspective, why do you have to stop saying no? Because saying no is completely ineffective now.
So, that makes complete sense. I know another thing, I talked about it a lot in my session, and, came up this morning on the panel you were on. The easiest way to figure out what services to be looking at and what to be doing is look at your users. Go directly to your
users are doing,
They'll find a way. They'll find a way around whatever you ban, whatever you exile, and if they need to do something, they're going to find a way to do it. Go talk to them.
Yeah. What products, what tools, what services are making your life easier? And so then let's look at, can we make something like that, or can we just use that, or what makes sense here? Because people at work aren't doing this stuff to break your rules. That's not why they're doing it. They are doing this stuff in order to be able to do their job efficiently and easily and better and stronger, and that's their goal. Their goal is to do their job, not to break your rules. So go look at what they're using to do their job and see if you can't enable that.
Yeah, the term is really enablement. How do you enable your users to get their job done better, faster, easier, whatever it is?
If you're part of your corporate shared services, whether you're HR or IT or information security or supply chain or any of those groups of people, your role in the company is to enable the people who actually do the business of the company to do it better.
And was it during your session that it came up how you got legal involved and made it easier for them? It may not have been a session.
It wasn't my session.
Okay, because somebody mentioned that one of the ways they got legal involved was they needed a policy to enable people to bring devices, so they went to legal, and legal said, wait a second, can we join that pilot? They were much happier to help you write the policy because they want to be part of the policy.
Right.
And when you work to enable people, everybody wants to be part of it.
Yeah, I think we just have to remember, one of the things that I believe both IT and InfoSec forget, we're not here to run IT or security or whatever. We're a shared service that was instituted in order to enable the people who are actually earning the money of the company to do that function.
And we're completely on the same page, and I know you have a plane to catch, and we've had a good half hour here, so as we're closing here, what's a final thought you want to leave?
A final thought.
I like to put people on the spot with that usually.
I think I believe we're in a fundamental shift in how things happen. Enterprise IT, as we've always known it, will not exist in 3 years. give or take.
100% agree.
What we're now calling the consumerization of IT in the enterprise, in 3 years is just going to be called IT.
I tend to refer to it as the ITization of the consumer.
Sure.
Because, a lot of times it's the consumers learning, whoever thought one of your users would go out there and know how to hook their device up to Exchange.
Right.
That was something that required someone from IT. They would be able to figure out how to set up the audio conference or the video conference, and it's, so it's easy to see where it's going.
Just to kind of continue to finish out that thought with an example, in 2008, we purchased and moved into a new corporate headquarters. And when we did that, we put in a world-class corporate conference center, and it had huge telepresence. Every single conference room has telepresence and yada yada. And the cost was pretty high, but it reduced the amount of travel we had to do by about half. In 2013, you would never even consider that because you could put a big screen TV on the wall, connect an Apple TV to it, connect a computer with a laptop with a
MacBook, an
video
iPad, something to
the Apple TV, and voila, you had telepresence.
I wrote a post, and I have to put it out there, but last weekend my daughter played in a soccer tournament, and I have 2 kids, and I couldn't make all the games. And one of the games, my wife just turned on FaceTime and flipped the camera around,
right?
I couldn't see every detail, but I got to watch my daughter score goals.
80%, right?
It was 80%, and it was awesome to see him play. And I got to see the rest of the game, so it was just this one. And we actually did it for the grandparents.
Yeah.
And they looked in. I won't compare one product to the other, but they used one product, a different product, to talk to my nieces.
Yeah. And
they said, "Wow, this is great." I said, "Yeah, you realize that right now you're talking to me while I'm driving a car 70 miles per hour over cell."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Okay." It's like,
nice.
And this is really good picture.
Yeah.
So, although they still have to learn to point that there's a little window with their face in it. I kept seeing my mother-in-law's forehead, but we'll work on that.
Yeah. So that's the reality, I think, is yesterday we built huge corporate telepresence facilities. Today we'll just use the technology available to us at the Apple Store or the Microsoft Store or the Best Buy or the whatever.
The Google Store, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
So this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Eric, and making the time before you leave. And to everybody out there, thanks for tuning in. Please send suggestions, replies, questions, and anything you have. We're going to post up Eric's personal blog, and we'll also post up his Twitter name. So his Twitter handle is _, his last name, which is Cowperthwaite.
There you go.
I'm not going to ask you to spell that. I will actually throw it up there. But if you have any suggestions, anything at all, please reach out to us on Twitter at the Mobilecast. Follow us on iTunes. You can also follow us on the Cloudcast mobile page, our Big Brother organization. So stay in touch, and until next time, we'll see you on the airways.